Okay, good morning, everybody. How are you? I bet you had a nice weekend. Not much? Why? Okay, but other than this, like, did you have time to write reports and write response? So, let us see what you have written. Let me see you, please. Please come. Yes. You just come here. Okay.
I'm sitting on my desk thinking of something to write in my daily report about the previous class. Actually, I didn't have the chance to read my report yet, but this time I have this gut feeling that this time Dr.
Wow,
Akram
look, you know, look here. And this is the beauty about like getting to write a report. Like, you think, you know, you're not going to read, but here she thought and she's reading.
About the last class, I really liked the themes of the poem. It wasn't just about courtly love as I expected. It also could be about power and weakness, and also how we connected Rain with the themes. It was very amazing.
Thank you very much. It's laconic, but what I like about this, you know what's mean laconic? Very short. But what I like about this report is like the way she is spontaneous and the way she is recapitulating the previous class by talking about the theme. Okay, yes? Yes? Report. Still like we are in the area of report.
Last class was an interesting class.
Say good morning, how are you? Like they are waiting for you, yeah? And you have to look at them. Go ahead. Okay.
Last class was an interesting class because Mr. Habib completed the last point in the poem. He used his lab and showed some of the report about poem, which gave us an important information. That's helped us to understand more. A lot of students participated with the teacher. Next, he used a new way that he divided us for groups. Only 3 students in the same group share with each other. So the lecture was full of a joint work. After that, he became
collaborative. I like the word collaborative work.
He wanted to ask each group of the first one to the second one. So the lecture full of discussion and question. At last, we finished the poem discussion. Then Mr. Habib called us to prepare us to a new poem.
To prepare a new poem. Good. Now I know somebody is like boiling. She wants to read her report. Is anybody like feeling that she needs to read her report before we shift to the response? Good. So, Henry Howard, Earl of Surrey. Description of spring. What do you think? Like, first, let me see who's ready to, response.
The season of buds and blooms fled away, with the gifts he brought on every spray, with the smiles he drew on every spot, and the gloom he erased behind every dot. For the green hills that used to spring, and the nightingales that always sing, the season of love will back again, when he reunites other hills somewhere. It's the angelic season to blow the joy in the heart, to lobe in the yards and catch the buck's heart. It's the time when hearts make up their minds to create a castle of blossoms rabbit sides. Yet some might consider it a matter of gloom, since in the party they failed to win a room. Those should be much more aware that life deals us rarely unfair.
Good, thank you. I think you are becoming more poetic in your response. So I think at the end of this course, we are going to have a new poet. Thank you. Okay, now let me just elicit your responses. Like, you read something about the poet, you read like Henry Howard. So let me see, like, what's your response without reading? Yes?
After writing and reading my first response on the front of the doctor, the student, and the cameras, I feel that I feel more.
No, I just want you like to talk without reading. What do you think of the poet, and what do you think of the poem?
The poem itself, it's amazing. Because we have a little difference between the first poem and the second poem.
Mm-hmm.
The poem itself and the poet. We have a little bit similar between the poem and the
We have some
second.
similarities and some differences.
I think that the difference is bigger than the similarities.
Mm-hmm.
And the use of the sonnet, it is a sonnet of the song.
So it seems like you are impressed by this sonnet more than the previous one.
Yes, of course.
Mm-hmm.
I think that it's more beautiful than the first one.
Uh-huh.
The language and the meaning itself, but it is distinguished and sharp. Because when you read the first 12 lines and the couplet, you will
Okay, so there is like, you know, an abrupt shift, you know, in the whole poem. Good. I like the way you approach the poem, like, and you know, you started to compare and contrast. And I think comparing and contrast between like two poets is good. And I want this angle to be developed in our course. Yes, today we are dealing with Henry Howard, who was a great admirer of Sir Thomas Wyatt, you know, the one who introduced the sonnet. Good. Any other response? Yes, please. Yeah, I like the word euphemistic. To be euphemistic, like, you know how to write this word? Euphemism, like to use nice words to express harsh ideas. For example, sometimes it is very embarrassing to say, I want to go to the toilet. So a better way is saying, I want to wash my hands. Mr. X, for example, died. This is very shocking. So he passed away. This is euphemism. But I don't know why you say he's euphemistic.
like because his style is the indirect way to convey his message, not directly as Sir Thomas.
Yeah, it means he's hedging. He's not like blunt. He's not direct. Okay, it seems like we need to develop this further. Good, thank you. Yes? Yes? Okay. What do you think? Do you like the poem? Okay, you're free to say we like it, we don't like it. What was the most interesting line for you? Like, these are, yes. Have you read the poem? Yeah. Was it disturbing? Because some people thought it was disturbing because, you know, the language itself is little bit, yeah, it's archaic language. It's not like, you know, very formal. It's archaic. Yes? Huh? It is not Old English, because if we are talking about Old English, it is completely different, you know. This is like, you know, it can be criticized as modern English, you know. Yes? What about here, people? Yes, please.
I think that they use the outside, the nature, to express something internal.
I like this. I like this. So he was trying like to speak about the internal by talking about, yeah, and this is like, you know, one of the differences between the two. Yes? It's, can you repeat that? Good color. Nature. So you think the poem is about like a change in nature? He liked that change, or he didn't like it? He liked?
But he's sad because he didn't like one of the aspect of this change or the rebirth of the nature. He not included with that.
So because he was not included in that change, do you want to say he was a little bit envious? You know what's been envious? Like he had some envy. Good. I like this. Yes?
He was shifting between two attitudes. At first, he was describing the beauty of nature and how is everything around it is new and changing. But at the same time, his attitude, well, he couldn't change and he couldn't be a part of this change.
Yeah.
And new.
Good. I like yes. Yeah, what about here, the people? Yes? What do you think?
I want to talk about
Yeah, it seems like all of you are doing well, but some of you are afraid to say their opinion. Go ahead.
in the first 12 lines he expressed about his love to the nature and the change which happened.
Do you think like he, when he talked about nature, did he show any feeling and attitude?
He reflected his insight by expressing from the outside.
So he used the description as a vehicle. Good. You talked. What about the rest? Yes? You like the poem or you don't like it?
I read the poem and I like the idea, the message of the poem because he described the nature and to describe his feeling.
So you talked about the message. What is the message like?
Not the message, the idea.
Yeah, but he has a message. Like, do you think he has a message? I think when we write, you know, we are having a message. What is the message? What is the possible message? Yes?
I think he's talking about the nature and everything around him changed from bad to different. But he isn't like this because he changed from
So,
bad
like,
to worse.
the message he's sending, like he's different, like he's, you know, sad. He's sad. So he wants, like, to convey his suffering. Good, okay.
He tries to gain our sympathy, to gain the sympathy and the pity.
Good. Is he trying to gain our sympathy?
Yes, it's clearly seen in the couplet, in the last two lines.
Ah.
Because when you read the first 12 lines,
Have you read that? How did you read that? Like, the first, like, I don't know. When you read the poem, you must have read it aloud. So this is the poem. And thus I see among these pleasant things, each care decays and my sorrow springs. How would you read this? I want you to read as if you, like, when you read it at home, you must have read it aloud. So how would you read this last couplet? And I like, you know, this is a couplet. How did you read it? And each care decays and, you know, and thus I see among these pleasant things, each care decays and yet my sorrow springs.
you mean how I read
Yeah,
it,
yeah.
how to understand it.
Yeah, how you read it aloud.
And thus I see among these pleasant things, each care decays and yet my soul springs.
Do you think this works like this? Like, does this fit with the atmosphere? No, I want it to be very poetic, as if you were on the stage and reading this. How would you read it? And thus, I see among these pleasant things, each care decays, and yet my sorrow springs. You like it like this? Ah, I don't like it. Yeah. So, yeah, there should be sadness going on. And thus, I see among these pleasant things, each care decays, and yet my sorrow springs. Huh?
I think when he writes a happy thing in the poem, you should read it with happy feelings.
Uh-huh.
Feel what the writer have felt when he wrote these words. And when he writes sad feelings or sad words, you should feel about it.
Okay.
I want to read the explanation.
You want to read? Okay, go ahead. I like this.
And thus I see among these pleasant things, each care decays, and yet my sorrow begins.
Good. My sorrow springs.
Sorrow.
Yeah. So you have like this sense of like envy, and thus I see among these pleasant things, each care decays. and yet my soul sprays. You know? So it's like focusing. There is concentration on this couplet. Okay, it seems like this poem is very interesting. But let me ask a last question about your response. As a Muslim reader, did you like the poem and why? As a Muslim reader, like, you know, as a reader, as a Muslim, do you like this poem or not? And what reasons would a Muslim have to like this poem? Uh-huh. Yeah. So you think I like this?
The poem or the poet tries to convey some new ideas that come to transfer to the reader. And when the revolutions in the Arab world,
Very good. I like this. You know,
we call it the Arabic.
the Arab Spring. Wow, good.
Which means a new life.
This is a new reading. This is a new political reading of the poem. Good.
A new life, a new way of, even a new way or style of life that they want to follow. And that's it can be like contact with you.
Good. I think, yes, as Muslims, like we are interested in the idea of regeneration. We are interested in the idea of resurrection, rebirth. You know, resurrection means like you are resurrected from the dead. And we have a lot of dead images or images of death. Then suddenly, all these images like were transformed to images of love, of, you know, life and, rebirth. Good. This is very interesting. Thank you for giving me this input. Now, let's go to the poet. Nobody told me anything about the poet, you know. As you see here, you know, Henry Howard, Earl of Surrey. And this is like a title. Earl, you know, Earl, it's a title, like Earl to be like in response. So it seems like he was, you know, a man from the nobles, you know. He was a man, you know, belonging to the court. He was a little bit different from Sir Thomas Wyatt. And look here, you know, all his birth shows that he was noble. He was the eldest son of Thomas Howard and Lady Elizabeth, daughter of a duke. So he's belonging to the royal family. And he was giving, you know, this title. He himself was a decision maker. And I think he was an important figure in English literature for some reasons. Now, Thomas Wyatt was influential, was very important. Why? Because he introduced the sonnet. Now we have here somebody who did something else. And here, you know, we are talking about his achievement. As you see, Henry Howard was one of the founders of the English Renaissance poetry. So when we're talking about Renaissance poetry, we're talking about poetry which was influenced by Latin, you know, culture. I think he translated, many of Latin writers, and his poetry was imitating, but he was trying to develop the Renaissance poetry. He wrote about love, he wrote about death, he wrote about life. So his spectrum of themes, was very wide. And I think he is accredited, as you see here, to develop the sonnet. Yes, Wyatt introduced the sonnet, but here we have a poet who developed the sonnet. And when I mean he developed, I'm not talking about just the rhyme itself, the couplet, but rather how the sonnet became into 4 parts rather than 2 or 3 parts. So the poem, the sonnet, became like 4 parts, 3 quatrains, and when I say quatrain, like 4 lines, and a couplet. And this is what Shakespeare like adopted after him. So yes, he developed the sonnet, and the sonnet became more flexible, because if we are talking about the Italian sonnet, an octave and assisted, it is a little bit rigid. You are restrained like to introduce the argument in the octave, and then you are forced to put forward the resolution or the solution, and that was very restraining to the poet. But here, you are gaining more flexibility. I like the way they are comparing, Wyatt and Surrey. Both of them were the fathers of the English sonnet, because one introduced it and the other developed it. However, like one of the most interesting, achievement, and he is credited, is the invention of blank verse. When we say blank verse, we're talking about, unrhymed iambic pentameter. And Shakespeare is greatly indebted to, Surrey, because all of Shakespeare's plays were written in blank verse. And blank verse, it is this unrhymed iambic pentameter. I don't know, like you might have read about his life. He had unfortunate life, and you know what happened to him? You know what happened to him? Why didn't you read about anything about him? You are bad today, I told you you have to read, and I gave you in the reader something about his life. So, if you keep slacking off like this, I'll be worried about you if you slack off. I told you, like, sometimes it is very important, like, to read about the life of the poet. Good. Let me keep asking you about the lines you like in the poem. Which line do you like? Which line do you like? Huh? The couplet? Okay. Other than the couplet? Other than the couplet, do you like anything else? Yes? The title. Why do you like it? How? Yeah, very good. Like, could you elaborate that for me? Contradiction. I wanted to show you like the trial of, it seems like we are not having a sound. Could we have do we have a sound system like that? This is the trial of him. He was tried on stage. Huh? Okay, I'm sorry. We need the sound system. Like, yes, our poet was beheaded. He was executed by King Howard for the accusation of treason. Like, as we said when we discussed Wyatt, the court of Henry VIII was full of intrigue. he was likely to become a king. Why? Because he was a descendant of so he was a threat. He was a threat to the king. So the king wanted to monopolize power. And as we said, like the culture of the time was to believe like that everybody should respect a position. And the king was appointed by God. This is unfortunate about him. I wish we had, you can watch this video. It is like the trial of Henry Howard. And you see he is now defending himself in front of the juries. But since we don't have the... It's very unfortunate that this man is losing his life. Had he lived, he would have been one of the most prolific poets of the 16th century, and he could have surpassed, many of the great poets of the time. Now I think it is time to shift to the poem and to read it aloud, The sweet season that bud forth and brings, with green hath clad the hill and eke the vale. The nightingale with feathers new she sings. The turtle to her make hath told her tale. Summer is come, for every spray now springs. The hart hath hung his old head on the pale. The buck in brake his winter coat he flings. The fishes fleet with a new repaired scale. The udder all her slough away she slings. The swift swallow pursues the fly's smell. The busy bee her honey now she mings. Winter is worn, that was the flower's bale. And thus I see among these pleasant things, each care decays, and yet my sorrow springs. Very beautiful, but sad. Okay. I don't know, you mentioned like in your response that we like him because he's euphemistic. He is less, let's say, less denigrating less offensive, mainly to women, than Sir Thomas Wyatt. And, okay, do you have an example of euphemism? Because I'm interested in this word. Do you have an example of euphemism here? So what did you say? He's euphemistic.
Because not directly use the word like Thomas when he said about his lover, about touch, Rolling Thunder.
So he was not like, like humiliating. He was not denigrating the woman by describing her how she. We don't have like this description of a woman as we had in, yeah. But I'll give you like one. Yes.
I think he didn't talk about his suffering. Not all about the poem in the poem, but he just hinted about the title. The title itself.
Yes, he hinted about the suffering in the title. But again, like if I want to draw your attention to a very explicit in the poem example of euphemism. Like if you look here, the turtle to her make hath told her tale. Now this is very, this is an example of euphemism. We're talking about a turtle and her mate. A turtle and a mate. Now, of course, we're talking about spring. And spring is the season of rebirth. It is the season of reproduction, regeneration, multiplication. And without, this, this relationship among these, let's see, creatures, there is no rebirth. So it is very important, like when we think of the turtle telling her mate a story. What kind of story? Like he talks about the story. But here we are talking about intercourse, intercourse among like this. Because this is a month of regeneration. But look how he spoke about this, intercourse in a very, euphemistic way. He didn't say like they are making love, in a way, but he say she is, and this is like, we understand this is like a love story, which involves like, this intercourse. It's an example of euphemism. But let me go to the poem. Some of you said that this poem is amazing. Who said that? Yeah, you said it is amazing.
Because it's full of the images. We say the use of words like nightingale, the springs, the...
So you want to say like this poem has very beautiful and lively description. Why? Because of the images. When we're talking about the images, we're talking about words that represent an image. We're talking about, imagery, like visual images, sound images, kinetic images, thermal images. Okay? There is something I want you to read, in the reader. There is something about imagery, the types of imagery, and I think you should read because, we might discuss this further in the next class. Some of you said like, I like the poem because he was shifting from the external to the internal. He was like, he gave, like the beautiful description of spring, and suddenly, he shifted to himself. But if we look at, the last couplet, we have a figure of speech. And thus I see among these pleasant things, each care decays, and yet my sorrow springs. Like we have paradox. What is the paradox?
We have here that he expressed the nature as a change from bad to better. And he's supposed to be like the nature, but he isn't. Because
Yeah, but again, like you should be like, what is the paradox exactly? Yes, like the paradox. Can you tell me this is the paradox exactly? Yes, Layla. How?
The nature is turned to beauty and the beautiful things, but his sorrow is a paradox. Like
It is, the paradox. That's right. It's the paradox. The paradox is like in the sorrow springing. Like we have seen, like spring has this, positive connotation. Like all those creatures were influenced by the spring, and everything was springing. The trees were sprouting, blooming. Every creature was involved in this rebirth. But here, what is springing? What is sprouting? It is the sorrow, which is a paradox. There is an irony. I think there is an irony. What is the irony? What is the irony? Look here. Yes, Layla, you're doing a good job today.
the irony is that all the nature was very beautiful because of the changing in the atmosphere of the nature. But himself, he is not happy.
Excellent. Yes. Excellent. Yes. So there is disparity. Disparity. You know what I mean? Disparity, like difference between the outside and the inside. So let me give you perhaps you're not familiar a lot with the irony. Irony We have many types of irony. We have verbal irony. We have dramatic irony. We have situational irony. And this is an example of a situational irony. Why? Because here you see the change is dominant. It dominates all the vista, but he's not included. See what I mean? Martin Luther King, in his famous speech, I Have a Dream, said, and here, we are living in an island of poverty, amidst an ocean of materialistic prosperity. So how come you are impoverished, you are poor, in a world which was full of opulence and richness? See what I mean? So here there is disparity. So the disparity here, like the change in nature, was dominant. It, dominated the whole vista, the whole creatures. But when it comes to the poet, this reminds me of the rhyme of Ancient Mariner, when the mariner was like aspiring for something to drink, but he was in the ocean and he said, water, water, everywhere. The board did shrink, but there is no drop to drink. Don't you think this is an irony? Yeah. Yes. And here the irony is like, good, look here, we started to talk about ironies, images, and we have not yet read the poem or even paraphrased. But, when it comes to me, I like this line, the swift swallow pursues the fly's mane. I like this. Why should you like a line like this? Huh? Why should you like the swift swallow pursues the fly's mane? Okay. Yes? The S sound, yes. Yeah. The alliteration.
It makes the line more confident.
And it gives like this sound, the swift swallow. The swift swallow. It is like the sound image. The sound image is made this, the swift swallow pursues the fly's mane. It's an image. It's an image of hyperactivity. Like the swift swallow is relentless, is always following, the flower, like going there, the flies on the flower. And I like the buzzy bee as well. The buzzy bee. Buzzy bee. We have a sound image here, but we have a figure of speech also. Excellent. We have onomatopoeia. Onomatopoeia, it is like, are you familiar with this term? Onomatopoeia. So I think, here we have a poet who has musical ear more than, our like poet. Okay, I can write it. Onomatopoeia. Onomatopoeia, it means the sound suggests the meaning. And the busy bee, okay, I just write it here. Okay. We mentioned perhaps poetry uses onomatopoeia. And I think we once talked about onomatopoeia. Onomatopoeia, onomatopoeic words like tick, tick, like splash, like kick, like hiss, like whisper, these are onomatopoeic words. Okay, let's look at the poem again. Were you disturbed a little bit by, because some people were disturbed by the suit. This is like Chaucer, huh? Have you ever read something from Chaucer? No. The suit season. It means the sweet season. Now, the suit and the word eke. Like, what's mean eke? Also, you know? So these words are archaic words. Archaic words. And when we say archaic words, words which, which are old words, archaic. So poets sometimes embellish. You know what I mean? Embellish? Embellish, beautify. Embellishment, like to beautify, embellish. Their poetry by, using archaic words. And archaism gives a sense, of, oldness, rustic nature to the poem. It's like it makes it very poetic. And I think later this use of archaism will be developed more and more by the famous Elizabethan poet, Edmund Spenser. I know we don't have time, but I'll do my best to paraphrase with you the poem in order to reconsider the poem next time in a very critical manner. Let's read the poem. The sweet season that bud and bloom forth springs, with green hath clad the hill and eke the vale. It is, see here, the season, spring, is dominating the whole vista. And this shows how, entire, the change is. How entire. It is very panoramic. We're talking about, a change in nature. So it included every creature and every aspect of nature. With the green hath clad the hill and eke the vale. Now we'll talk about personification, figures of speech, imagery next time, but this is to paraphrase the poem. The nightingale with feather now she sings. The nightingale with feather now she sings. Okay? The turtle to her make hath told her tale. Summer is come, for every spray now springs. Again, spring and spring. It is full of S sound, The hart hath hung his old head on the what is the hart? Huh?
The male deer.
The male deer. The buck in break. What is the buck?
Deer.
Also a deer, but it's a male. Look here, some of the creatures are male. And we know that male are not always associated with rebirth. But here, why do you think that mentioning the male is significant? This shows how powerful the thrust of life is. You know what I mean? The thrust of life. The power of life. It is very powerful. The motive of life is powerful. It is so powerful that it included even the male, creatures who are not associated with rebirth. Because, rebirth is all the time associated with the feminine, with female rather than male. Okay, the fishes float with new repaired scale. What a wonderful image is this. The other, all her slough away she slings. The other, the snake, the swift swallow pursues the fly's smail. The swallow is moving from one branch of tree to another to follow, the fly. The busy bee, her honey now, she mixes. It is mingles, Winter is worn that was flowers bathed. So here, the whole stanza is recapitulated by this line. Winter is behind. Winter is behind now. And thus I see among these pleasant things each care decays, and yet my sorrow springs. Very sad. So look here, it's a shift. It is like, as if you see here, like we have parallelism. Each line, there is, something changing from death to life. But suddenly, something is immune to change, is not susceptible to change, which is like the misery and the agony. Okay, so you see, we have a nobleman who's talking about his suffering in a very polite and gentle manner. So, I think we have a better idea about the poem. Next time, we're going to concentrate on this poem more, to explore it further, to see the figures of speech, to see, the rhyme, the rhythm, the sonnet, and so on. Side by side, I want you also to prepare the second part of the critical plan. Okay? So, do you have any question? Thank you.